And that brings us to our guest today, Clare Lopez. Clare is one of the nation's foremost experts on counterintelligence, the Middle East, jihad, and Iran. She has served the nation tirelessly in numerous leadership roles at the tip of the spear in national security. Clare, it is a pleasure to have you back on once again, although the circumstances are horrendous.
Yes, thanks for having me, Matt. I'm glad to be with you, and it needs to be talked about. So I'm very glad that you're doing the program and glad to be with you.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, first of all, what do you expect in the next 24 hours in the Middle East, and particularly whether this will expand to a broader war?
Well, we know that over 350,000 Israeli reservists have been called up. They are currently staging around the northern border of Israel. Northern border of Gaza, southern border of Israel, getting ready for the ground operation. Probably, maybe not 24 hours, but let's say within 48 hours or so. They will go into Gaza. The Air Force, the Israeli Air Force, is hitting multiple dozens of targets ahead of time, trying to take out leadership, trying to take out missile rocket launch sites. But within the next, I would say, 48 hours or so, by this weekend, I think we can expect to see the Israeli ground forces of the IDF going into Gaza to take out and completely destroy Hezbollah and also PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
So that brings up the question. Iran has threatened to intervene if the United States does. Turkey, at least in what seems to be a veiled threat, is indicating it might get involved. You have the 101st Airborne in Jordan right now. It looks like there's a front opening up in the northeast of Israel and Syria. You have Iraqi militia commanders that are tied to Hezbollah moving into the area. I mean, do you think this is going to ignite into a broader war?
It could, but I think at the moment the decision is being made in Iran. That's the headquarters for all of this. We know from the Wall Street Journal article, of course, from a couple of days ago, that Iran is the one that planned, organized, and directed Hamas in the execution of these attacks that began this past Saturday. The decisions are being made in Tehran. We know also that from August of this past summer, that meetings were held among Iranian top leadership, IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Quds Force. Even the foreign minister, Abdullahian, appeared at one or more of these meetings held in Beirut, Lebanon, also together with Hezbollah, with Hamas, and the PIJ top leadership also planning this out. So currently those decisions are still being made out of Tehran. I've heard various experts, including senior, retired, former IDF military officers who have assessed that at this moment, Iran is holding Hezbollah back, that they have decided in Tehran that Hamas can be sacrificed. Because Israel will destroy it. It can be sacrificed so long as Hezbollah and its capabilities, and as possibly as many as 150,000 rockets, missiles, some of them fitted with updated precision guidance systems, not all of them, but many of them, preserving that capability for when the time comes, and it will come, when Israel has to make a decision about Iran's nuclear weapons program. And they wanted to preserve Hezbollah for that conflict to come. As for those other areas, yes, there have been, from Lebanon too, some rockets and mortars fired, also some attempts at cross-border intrusions into Israeli space. They were taken care of. Yes, also a few shots fired off of the Golan Heights. The Israelis can take care of that as well. And then, of course, the Hashd Shabi, or sometimes called the Popular Mobilization Units, that are under the supervision, the control, direction of the Quds Force. Ismail Qani, by the way, he is the successor to the late, not very belated, but in any way, gone off to meet his virgins, Qasem Soleimani, that President Trump took care of back in January of 2020 when he was in office. So Ismail Qani is the one who directs those Iraqi-based militias. There is a danger there for American forces that are located on bases throughout Iraq, supporting the Iraqi military. They have come under fire on a regular basis, more or less, previously, but certainly it is Iran that controls those Hashd Shabi, as they call them, militia units, and they have been stirring up some trouble too. But it doesn't look yet like a full-on order has been given for everybody to rise up, although exhortations have been made towards militias in particularly Samaria, I think not so much Judea, but Samaria, towns like Jenin and Nablus and Tulkarm, where there are clan-based local jihadi militias that have launched attacks of different kinds, shooting attacks, car ramming attacks, knifing attacks in places like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And the airwaves aimed at them are trying to stir them up. But that also is something that the Israeli Defense Forces can take care of.
So that brings up a couple of questions. The Israelis being surprised. I think for a lot of us, that was kind of one of the biggest questions out there. How possibly could they have been surprised? And then the corollary question, was any Russian electronic warfare technology given to Iran, which was then given to Hamas?
Well, let's go to the last question first, because yes, it does look like there was a massive cyber attack against Israel, preceding and carrying on through the attack itself. A lot of the border between Israel and Gaza, and I've been there multiple times, consists of wired, sensor-embedded wire fencing. And those embedded sensors in the wire fencing are supposed to alert nearby border police if there is anything or anyone approaching, anything from a rabbit to an incursion like this. But that could have been knocked out. The cameras perhaps knocked out. So yes, that technology could have been provided to the Hamas jihadis by Iran. Very possibly, I don't know that for a fact, but that's a possibility. So why else was Israel taken so much by surprise? Well, number one, it was the morning of Shabbat, and people were either in their homes for the day and or maybe getting ready to go to the synagogue for prayers. It was also the last day of the week-long celebration of Sukkot that followed the high holy days of Rosh Hashanah and then Yom Kippur. The week after them came Sukkot, and this was the end of that week. People were still in a celebratory, probably frame of mind. Many of the IDF forces had been drawn off also, maybe at home to celebrate, but also drawn off to areas in Samaria and to the northern border of Israel with Lebanon. So a number of troops that you might have thought would be in southern Israel, close to Gaza, were not, and took much too long to get there, while the savage jihadis were slaughtering people. So all of those reasons taken together, but one more, and that is that I think Iran helped to tutor, if you will, the Hamas forces in PSYOPs. And so, as people may know who are listening, Israel provided Hamas, provided Gaza with water, electricity, food shipments coming in from UNRWA, in particular, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, and also jobs. Something like 20,000 Gazans crossed over the checkpoints every day to go into Israel to work at jobs that paid them, 8 or 10 times what they could make in Gaza. And so the impression was deliberately given to the Israelis, I think, this is a possibility of one of the scenarios, that Hamas was content with these economic measures that help the people. And they wanted that impression to be given to Israel. And Israel apparently believed that. Now, there are other indications that Israeli intelligence did know about some of those meetings, those planning meetings we just mentioned up in Beirut over the August till October timeframe, but may have come to the wrong analytical conclusions about what those indicators and warnings really meant and really purported. They may have been consumed, may have been otherwise distracted by a lot of domestic political tumult inside of Israeli politics too.
And in the last few minutes that we have, a quick history on where did Hamas come from and what is the threat to the U.S. homeland because of an open southern border where who knows how many terror cells have come across?
Well, Hamas is the Gaza branch of the jihadist Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. And way back in the 1960s, when Yasser Arafat's Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, was wreaking havoc, beginning to wreak havoc with attacks and kidnappings and so forth, the Israeli government actually took the decision that supporting the predecessor to Hamas, it was not yet formed, but the predecessor to Hamas, under the leadership of one Sheikh Yassin, was a counterbalance or could be a counterweight somehow to Yasser Arafat, who was seen as the more dangerous threat at that time. The Israeli government actually helped Hamas to get formed. Now, Hamas proper did not take shape or become formed until 1988. That is 1 year after the outbreak of the first Intifada. 1988 is the year that Hamas first put out its covenant, and that can be found in English translation PDF online. And of course, it's called a covenant because it's not an agreement between men and men or groups and groups. It is a commitment between Hamas and God. That's why they call it a covenant. Mm-hmm. And in the first opening lines of that covenant, it basically says Israel exists and will exist, continue to exist until Islam obliterates it as it has others before it. I'm paraphrasing just a little bit, but in essence, that's what the opening lines of the Hamas covenant say, so you understand where their motivation comes from. So Hamas itself formally took shape by 1988 and then was involved in that first Intifada and later on in the second Intifada that broke out in the year 2000 as well. The Israelis, I think, have lived to rue the day that they helped Hamas, its predecessor, to be formed, to be allowed to develop in Gaza.
Now, the Muslim Brotherhood, as we both know, is the largest threat as far as jihadi organizations are concerned. I know arguably there might be a bigger one with the OIC, but I want to talk specifically about the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States. What is the danger to the U.S. homeland right now because of the southern border? And are these threats that something might happen here in the U.S. real, legitimate?
Well, certainly they are real. The Muslim Brotherhood in the United States operates through a vast network of front groups. Folks might be most familiar with groups like CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, or maybe ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. Many others are front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood. But in the United States, and really elsewhere in the world, the Muslim Brotherhood has never, ever carried out any violence or act of terrorism against America or Americans. And that's why the Muslim Brotherhood cannot be designated to the foreign terrorist organizations list. It operates more as a dawah, a propaganda outfit, information operations. They operate through the interfaith dialogue movement, those kinds of initiatives. More to the point of the second part of your question there, the border. In the last couple of years and a half that the Biden administration's been in power, that southern border with Mexico has been absolutely wide open. We have no idea who all have come through there, who continue to come through there. We do know that Customs and Border Protection, which are doing absolutely the best job they possibly can, despite incredible constraints on them actually fulfilling their own jobs. But they have intercepted, apprehended near 200. The number is 180 something, I think, at this point in time, of individuals trying to cross that border on the terror watch list of the United States. We don't even know how many others have gotten in as so-called gotaways. They saw them, but they didn't catch them, or those who were just never even seen. We know from reporting by investigative reporters like Todd Bensman and Michael Yon, who have been at the border with Mexico on down through Central America at the Darien Gap that sits between South America, Colombia, and Panama, that they have watched, in particular in recent weeks, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of single, young, military-aged men without wives, without families, children, coming through, headed north. The NGOs, the Christian, Catholic, and other groups of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, like Catholic Charities, the Methodist, the Hebrew Aid Society, they used to be called, are aiding and abetting, along with the United Nations, these illegals with food, clothing, shoes, backpacks, and debit cards that get reloaded every month to bring those illegals north. And among those young, single, fighting-aged, military-looking men are hundreds of Chinese who, by their appearance and behavior, appear to be possibly part of something called the Jungle Tigers, which is the designation for the 75th Special Operations Brigade of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. So yes, there's much to be feared. They're already inside the country, never mind the special airlift by the Department of Defense out of Kabul 2 years ago of unvetted Afghans. And if Al-Qaeda and the Taliban had not seeded that flow with their own jihadis, I'd be much surprised. They're all here. It's going to happen. It's coming.
We're out of time. Clare Lopez, thank you. Thank you for the insight. Thank you for the wisdom. God bless you and keep up the fight.
Thank you. Thank you very much.